Maria de la Cruz, a 20-year-old Filipina singer from a small coastal town in Manila, stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage with a quiet blend of fear and hope swirling inside her. She had never stood before such a massive audience, thousands of faces, bright camera rigs, towering stage lights, but she carried something stronger than nerves, faith. In her right hand, she gently held her mother's old wooden cross, its edges worn from years of her mother's prayers. It was her anchor, her reminder of every struggle she had survived. As she walked to the center of the stage, the judges watched her with mild curiosity. Simon Cowell tilted his head slightly, studying her as if trying to understand the story behind her soft eyes. Maria felt her heartbeat racing, echoing in her ears. But she forced herself to smile, remembering the words her mother had told her before she passed. When you sing, sing as if God Himself is listening. When Simon asked her what she would perform, Maria's voice trembled at first but grew steady. A Christian worship song, it helped me through the darkest time of my life. The audience leaned in. The studio shifted from playful energy to a sacred stillness, as if everyone sensed something significant was about to unfold. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, whispering a short prayer under her breath. This was more than a performance, it was her offering, her testimony. The soft instrumental intro began, and she took one deep breath. Her shaking hand steadied. Her nerves melted into purpose. Then, with courage rising from her soul, Maria opened her eyes, lifted her chin, and prepared to release the first note that would change everything. The moment the first note left Maria's lips, the atmosphere inside the AGT studio transformed instantly. It wasn't just singing, it was an awakening. Her voice emerged soft yet impossibly clear, filled with emotion so raw that it felt like a quiet wave sweeping across the entire room. The judges' faces changed almost in unison. Sophia leaned forward, eyes widening, while Heidi slowly placed a hand over her heart. Even Howie, who often struggled to react to ballads, froze as if he didn't want to miss a single breath of her sound. As Maria progressed into the verse, her voice grew stronger, smoother, and more heavenly. Every note she released carried a story, of loss, faith, survival, and love. The lyrics of the worship song washed over the audience like a warm light, and many felt their eyes stinging with unexpected tears. She wasn't performing, she was confessing, pouring her soul onto the stage with an honesty that was impossible to ignore. The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing the small tremble of her bottom lip and the way her eyes glistened but didn't fall apart. She wasn't holding back her emotion, she was transforming it into sound. In the back of the auditorium, a teenager whispered, "She's singing like she's been through something real," and the woman beside her simply nodded, wiping a tear. As Maria entered the first chorus, her voice soared effortlessly, rising higher and stronger like a prayer lifted straight to heaven. The entire audience fell silent, not because they were told to, but because they were captivated, completely taken by the purity of her tone and the sincerity of every word. Everyone knew, even this early, that they were witnessing something extraordinary. As Maria reached the heart of the song, something remarkable happened. Her voice lifted into a soaring high note that rang through the studio with breathtaking clarity. It wasn't loud for the sake of power, it was controlled, emotional, and filled with a depth that felt almost supernatural. The audience gasped collectively, but the most shocking reaction came from the one man who rarely showed surprise, Simon Cowell. Simon, usually composed and unreadable, leaned back in his chair as if physically pushed by the force of her voice. His eyebrows rose, his mouth parted slightly, and for the first time that night, he appeared completely speechless. The camera captured the exact moment his expression shifted from curiosity to stunned disbelief. He wasn't just impressed, he was moved, something that didn't happen often. Maria hit another note, so clean, so spiritually charged, that Simon whispered, unaware his mic was picking it up. "This is extraordinary." He leaned forward again, elbows on the table, staring at her with a seriousness that hinted he understood the gravity of what he was witnessing. This wasn't a contestant simply singing well. This was a soul expressing something divine. Heidi turned to Simon and whispered, "Wow, look at your face." But Simon didn't react. He couldn't take his eyes off Mariah. The judges had seen thousands of singers, but Mariah's performance was different. It broke through defenses, expectations, and even Simon's famously unshakable exterior. The audience could feel the shift. Something big was happening, something rare. And as Mariah continued with unwavering emotion, Simon's earlier skepticism had vanished completely. He wasn't judging anymore. He was admiring. As Mariah moved into the final chorus, her voice seemed to bloom with even greater emotion, filling every corner of the vast auditorium. The music swelled beneath her like a rising tide, but it was her voice, clear, trembling with sincerity, that carried the audience into a place far beyond the stage. Each word felt like a prayer, each note a confession of pain and gratitude wrapped together. People in the audience began to cry openly. Not a few, not some, many. A woman in the second row clutched her chest, tears running down her cheeks uncontrollably. A father holding his young daughter wiped at his eyes, trying to hide his reaction but failing miserably. Even one of the camera operators, a man who had filmed hundreds of performances, paused to quickly swipe a tear from his face before continuing to work. Mariah stood in the center of the stage, lost in the song, eyes closed as she lifted her hand gently toward the ceiling lights. It looked as though she wasn't performing for the crowd, she was singing directly to God, offering the depth of her soul through every note. The audience felt that sincerity, almost as if they were witnessing something sacred rather than a competition audition. By the time she sang the last line, her voice softened into a delicate whisper that echoed with aching beauty. Then, silence. A full second of stillness. No one moved. No one breathed. It was the kind of silence that only happens after something truly life-changing. And then, the entire auditorium erupted into a standing ovation. People jumped to their feet, clapping with bursting emotion. Some cried harder. Some shouted her name. Everyone knew they had just experienced a performance they would remember for the rest of their lives. The applause thundered through the studio like rolling waves, but Mariah stood frozen, hands trembling, eyes shimmering with disbelief. She had finished her song, yet the emotion in the room hadn't faded. It had only grown stronger. Golden light reflected off the stage floor as the judges rose to their feet one by one, their expressions stunned, softened, and deeply moved. Simon Cowell was the last to stand. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at Mariah with an expression no one expected, not the harsh critic, not the perfectionist, but a man genuinely touched. He exhaled slowly, leaning toward his microphone. "Mariah," he said, voice unusually gentle, "I've heard many singers in my life. Many good ones. But what you just did." He paused, his voice catching for a brief moment. "That was divine. It didn't feel like a performance. It felt like healing." The audience erupted again, cheering, some shouting, "Yes," and "Give her the buzzer." Simon looked down at the golden buzzer in front of him, then back at Mariah, still shaking, still clutching her mother's cross. And before anyone could guess his next move, he pressed the button with a firm, emotional certainty. Boom! The iconic golden buzzer sound filled the room as confetti burst from the ceiling, raining down like shimmering blessings. Mariah gasped, covering her face with both hands, falling to her knees as tears poured freely. It was too much, too beautiful, too overwhelming, too unreal. The judges applauded. The audience screamed. Simon smiled, really smiled, as he walked onto the stage to greet her. "You deserve this," he whispered to her. "Your mother would be proud." Mariah nodded, still crying, still shaking, still glowing under the shower of gold. In that moment, a dream didn't just come true. It became destiny.